Okay, so I'm Brent in Japan. Welcome to the Brent in Japan podcast. I have as a guest Kurinton, and he can explain the name himself. The reason why I wanted to have you on is because I came across you on Instagram, and I come across a lot of like Japan content, but you just had this like real calm, easy way of talking, and you explain everything really cool, and we kind of have like almost no overlap of the content we create. You give like a lot of really detailed information in some of the stuff we had, and plus you do other things. And your one thing I love about your stuff is photographically, videographically, it's like really well composed because you are a photographer, right?
Yeah. Yes, I am. And I went to film school. I was born and raised in, I'm sure we're going to get to this, but yeah, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I went to UCLA for film directing.
Wow.
And but after that, so yes, that's my background. We can get a little bit more into that later if you'd like, you know?
Yeah. So, it amazes me how poor people's pictures are, because it's just like, forget about medium to advanced composition, like the rule of thirds or whatever, things like that, or, like framing and stuff. Just like, what are you taking a picture of? So just take that. Like if you wanted a picture of me, okay, so this is where I am. But you get a lot of people like, I get pictures of me like this,
Yeah. It looks.
Are you taking a picture of this, or are you taking a picture of the person? Like, come on.
Yeah. I think that like, as much as this might be kind of the opposite take that a lot of people have nowadays, I think on one hand, it is good that like everybody's got a really good quality camera in their pocket. Like everybody's got a smartphone and they've got a good, for the most part. I also think that it has essentially made all of our photography watered down and has pretty much made it so like it is such an incredible difference when you stop taking photos on your phone and when you start taking photos. If it's on a digital camera, that's fine. If it's on a film camera, that's fine. Even if like you spend $100 and you get like a little digicam from like 2008 or something like that. Taking photos on these devices rather than a phone where you can take 10,000 photos and then never look at them again. Taking these photos on devices that are separate from your phone, digital or film or otherwise, really makes you think quite a lot deeper about every single photo that you're taking. And I cannot recommend this enough. If you don't want to take this is a thing for me. Like if you don't want to take a deep dive into the expensive world of film photography, or even the expensive world of digital photography, like the really expensive Sony cameras and Fujifilm cameras, go buy a 10 or 15-year-old like little digicam that you can slip in your pocket and walk around with it. And when you see something that you think is photo worthy, take a photo of it, right?
Yeah.
And it starts to make us be a little bit more selective. But yeah, that's my rant on, on
true.
iPhone photography and stuff.
I tend to, I agree with you. And at the same time, when I take all my pictures with my phone, and I had a digital camera until probably 2006 or 2008 or something like that. And then it's just like, okay, I'm not taking two devices, but I still take pictures with the same like attitude of gravitas as I did before. So when I take pictures, I don't just figure it out later. I know that I'm going to have to like go through them all and delete like the ones that are no good, So yeah, I try to make them good. And I often just take one and people go like, that's it? Yep, I got it. That's all I needed. This is how many do you want me to take? Because I think people are so used to having everybody take a million pictures. Yeah. Anyway, another reason why I wanted to talk to you is because you have a very different lifestyle than I do. And I think one that is increasingly more popular, especially with people who are considering moving to Japan, because you live out in the countryside.
I do. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So can you explain to me first, let's tell everybody, you can explain what your name means on the screen there.
Sure.
And then, how you came to Japan and where you're living, because I think it's really interesting.
Sure. So, Kuri Kurinton, I got this name. I didn't come up with this name. So when I moved to Japan, I started teaching in a public high school. For those of you listening who don't know, Kuri Kinton is a little like confection, I guess. It's like a little Japanese sweet made of ground chestnuts and flour and sugar. And my name is Clinton. But if you make that name into a Japanese katakana name, it's Kurinton. And all of my students thought this sounded a lot like Kuri Kinton, the little chestnut sweet. And so all of my students would call me Kuri Kurinton as like a little nickname joke, and they'd all laugh and be like, ha 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 ha, yeah, that's so cute, Kuri Kurinton, the little chestnut boy. And so that's how I got this name. Yeah.
I used to make that joke like every time I was eating the traditional Japanese New Year food called osechi, that where Kuri Kurinton makes its appearance. I always used to say Kuri Kurinton Daitorio.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we started to laugh. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so how did you come to Japan and where are you living?
Sure. So you want my full street address? No, just kidding. But like where so
open your door.
Yeah, I hear a knock. I'm like, but so I graduated from UCLA's film school in 2016. And I went on to work in various fields in film. I was working as an editor at a small production company where I was, kind of the finishing editor of a lot of projects like music videos and advertisements for iPhone apps and things like that. And I was also, but the thing was that I was also working as an intern at a big production company, which I'll probably not name. I don't want to like slam them. It's been forever. And at this production company, it's a huge production house. It's like, the people who made the X-Men movies, the people who made the most recent film with Timothée Chalamet, the Bob Dylan film. Like, this was the production company that I was working at. And at that production company, I was, to put it very, very lightly, I was just being verbally abused every day I went into my internship, right? And it was essentially this guy who was the intern coordinator, which is really just one position above the interns themselves, right? Whose power got to his head because he's in Hollywood. And he thinks that, I got here through being verbally abused, so I get to verbally abuse you. And I was there for a while, and I was editing for people's projects for a while, and I was working on set. And in LA, I was just I wasn't able to make ends meet, right? And I was struggling really hard in the film industry, even though that's what I wanted and what I really felt like was like my passion. But I was like, here's the deal. Like, I need to take a break from this. I need to take a step back. It didn't help that I was also in like a really volatile, like abusive relationship where someone was treating me very, very badly. And I was like, I gotta take a step back from, I think, all of this. And so I started looking up like jobs abroad. Right. And of course, one of the first things that comes up is the JET program. For the JET program, for those of you who are listening who don't know what that is, Japan exchange and teaching program, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you did like JET. Okay. Yeah. I thought you were saying like timeout with like your hand signal. I was like, oh yeah. You have a question? No.
I should listen. Okay. Keep my hands.
But yeah, the JET program, I applied for the JET program. I got the JET program, and I moved, and on my application, I had sort of chosen like for the places that I wanted to live. I didn't know much about Japan. I had only been here once prior. So I chose like Kanto area, Kansai area, and Hiroshima City. Because I really loved Hiroshima when I went there. I didn't get any of those places. And they were like, hey, we're going to place you out in Gifu Prefecture. And I was like, where? Where is that? I don't know. I've literally never heard of this place before.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. And it was such a blessing in disguise. I was placed in such a convenient area. I'm 40 minutes outside of Nagoya, which is like one of the biggest cities in the country, one of the top 5 biggest cities in the country. I'm on a main train line. I live in an absolutely gorgeous area, like nature-wise, hikes, little mom and pop shops, all this stuff. And so I had spent like my whole life thinking, like being born and raised in LA, thinking, oh yeah, I'm a city boy, you know. And then I was sort of forced to experience this countryside life. And I was like, I'm wrong about that. I'm not a city boy. I like this a million times more. Oh, and yeah, that's where I've been ever since, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Cool. And then, so did you like teaching?
Yes. So I did have teaching experience, and this is, I think, a little bit of a stigma of the JET program. It's like, oh, well, anyone can get that job, even if you don't teach. And it's like, to a certain degree, kind of, there's a half truth to that, but they do pretty intense vetting for the JET program. But, I was the department chair of, I was the art department chair of a summer school, like, art intensive program in Hollywood, where I was teaching kids who were in that transitional period between elementary school and junior high school. I was teaching them like the basics of like how to tell a story using their like iPad cameras and stuff like that. Yeah. Right. So I was teaching those kids. I loved teaching the kids. And I think it was that experience that kind of gave my JET application a little bit of like the edge when being, you know, up against the competition. Yeah. Was like, oh, you were the department chair of a summer school program. That's pretty solid. Even though like at that time, like I now know with, you know, several years of teaching experience here, I now know that I could have probably been a better teacher, but that's part of being a teacher, is learning how to teach better, learning how to be a better instructor and things like this, you know? So
here. Yeah. I always have this thing where I think about the things that I could do better, and then I implement them like 3 years later.
Yeah. I always feel bad when I make a new lesson plan, and the first, like, let's say I'm teaching like second year students or something, and I make a new lesson plan for them. The first class period that I teach that lesson plan is always like my guinea pig class. You know, it's always like I'm going to learn how to make this lesson plan better for the next ones, but you guys are going to have to bear with me, you know, like.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. I had one job where I had taught 4 of the same lessons in a row. And so, the first class, sometimes I didn't even finish the lesson plan, but the last class I like finished early, and I was like, okay, hey, so what are your plans for the weekend? Yeah. Even if you don't like, if somebody's out there thinking like, hey, I could go live in Japan, but what kind of job am I going to do? If you can get a job teaching is great, even if you're not crazy about teaching or whatever. First of all, it's totally different from the image of teaching that you have in your country, where there's like metal detectors and kids will tell you to F off and stuff like that. Japanese kids are so nice and kind and pure and energetic. Yeah. And then, and then find another place where you can work as little and get paid as much, you know, for hanging out with kids, and like you get the job because you can basically speak English and stand up straight. And the second one isn't even that important. Yeah. And so it's a good way to come here. Definitely, if you're going to come to Japan, teaching the JET or ALT programs are the best way, I think.
Yeah. There are, I would say, it's a really great way to get your foot in the door here. The JET program is like the gold standard, right? And then you've got Altia, which is pretty good. Altia Central, I guess, is pretty good. I can't really vouch for the other ones, but I do know that like I'm no longer on the JET program. My wife is no longer on the JET program. we did meet here.
Right.
which
I was going to ask because you
strange coincidence. Yeah.
Left your relationship and then you picked up a wife along the way. So
yeah. So like we're no longer on the JET program. I'd say like just even above the JET program, because the JET program has a 5-year contract limit. Above the JET program in terms of like the gold standard is being privately hired with a school or with a company. Right. Because there aren't going to be contract limits. It's not an ALT position. I'm no longer an ALT. I'm an English teacher. My wife is an English teacher. So ALTs, assistant language teachers, the problem with the ALT position is it really depends on the school that you're placed or the schools that you're placed. It can really be kind of a lottery system with like how much they use you, how well they know how to utilize you as a teacher, as an ALT, because you've got some ALTs, some people who are going to come here with teaching licenses and back in the States or in Canada or the Philippines or somewhere. And they come here thinking, I'm going to be the best English teacher ever. And then they're placed at a school where all they're asked to do is read and repeat words, right? Which is like the human tape recorder trope of ALTs, which can be really tough. But then you can end up at schools like for my school, I was so lucky. I was placed at a prefectural high school, one of the highest level high schools in Gifu Prefecture. And they gave me a lot of curriculum freedom. They're like, hey, we're working on this chapter in the textbook. We'd like you to create a lesson plan using this chapter. You are the main teacher in the classroom. We will help you. And so there are those sort of rare circumstances where ALTs get more teaching control in the classroom. And that's when I think the job has a lot more meaning,
Yeah. Yeah, so you're also not only the school, but even more so, you're at the mercy of the English teacher that you're working with those programs. Because, like you said, sometimes they want you to do nothing. And often they can't speak English well enough and they don't want you showing them up. So they use you like as a tape recorder, basically. But then you get the total other opposite way is like, okay, well, I'll teach my half of the class and then you teach your half of the class. I'm teaching the receptive, like reading and listening, and then you teach the speaking, writing. Yeah, like that. So.
Right. And that is very common. Yeah. And I think especially you run into that problem that you just mentioned with the teachers not being very good at English, especially if you're placed in elementary schools or junior high schools. Elementary schools, especially, the younger the kids, the greater the chance that the English teacher is not actually very good at English, which can be really tough. And I mean, the thing is that it's not their fault. And I think anybody who comes here and teaches at an elementary school who gets frustrated by like, oh man, the English teacher that I'm teaching with isn't any good at English, can't even speak English. You just take a step back and remember, it is not their fault. There is an English system here that is not among the strongest educational systems in the country. Mm-hmm. And you've got a system that will allow someone who wants to be an English teacher to become an English teacher without being able to comfortably speak the language, which I don't think we'd do with any other subject. You wouldn't go into a math class and be learning from a teacher who doesn't know how to do basic arithmetic.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So it's important to remember it's not a failure of the person, it's a failure of the entire the sort of Juken system, the testing system, the whole English system that is a little bit broken in various ways. There are some things that are okay about it, and then there are a lot of other things that are like, that needs work.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely because they're teaching for a lot. They're teaching for tests, and the tests don't have a speaking component, and so the teacher actually is, in trying to prepare the students, is doing them a favor by staying away from speaking, not wasting their time on speaking, they think.
Right.
Anybody who knows anything about language acquisition knows that speaking and output is a great way to learn a language better. So if you want to learn grammar or listening better, and arguably even if you want to be a better reader, being a better speaker is going to help all of those as well.
Right. Yeah. And it's so true. It's so true. All of the components, listening, speaking, reading, writing, you cannot, like, at this point, I think it's interesting, like the amount of research that, like, once you get here as someone who's like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to be teaching English, I better know what I'm doing. You have to sort of do a little bit of research on, like, okay, well, how do I get these kids acquiring the language? And everything you'll read, every single thing you'll read is you've got these skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing. If you remove one of them, it is a detriment to the entire system.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you have a testing sort of infrastructure where, and for the people who are listening who don't exactly know how this works, just to get into a good high school, you have to take what in America we would kind of think of like as an SAT type test, right? So a big standardized test to get into a good high school. And then you have to take big standardized tests again to get into a good university. So a lot of the kids' education revolves around being able to take these really, really tough standardized tests that can be so difficult that if you handed me some of their university entrance exam stuff, there are things that are like, you're joking, right? Like this is what we would be reading in a high level university course in America as a native material, not what I would be reading as a second language, like.
And it's worse because I heard that they actually purposely tried to trip up the students, like in the English, like comprehension. They purposely write things that they know are difficult to translate into Japanese or almost impossible. And they word things in a tricky way that makes them more prone to make a comprehension mistake. I just heard about that recently. It's
right. Yeah. I mean, it can be really tough. I mean, here's the thing. If you've ever, and I'm not talking about you specifically, but like, if you've ever taken a Japanese test, that they are designed to mess with you a little bit. Like, for example, you've taken the JLPT?
No.
Okay. I have passed.
I've looked at a test and I couldn't even understand some of the questions, let alone like do the answers. Yeah.
Right. I've passed the N2. I've taken N5, N4, N3, N2. I haven't taken N1. And if you take one of these tests, it's insane. Like, honestly, truly, it is designed specifically to trip you up. And if you administer one of these tests to a Japanese person, they're just laughing the whole time. They're like, "You're joking, right? Like, this is a joke," right? Because it's. I think the best way to describe test taking culture in Japan and test taking education in Japan is when you're studying to pass these tests, you are learning the skills required to take and pass these tests. You are not learning the skills that you are being tested of. Does that make sense? So, like, if you're taking a big standardized English test, you're actually learning the skills to take that specific English test, like ACAN or TOEFL. But you're not actually learning English itself. If you pass the JLPT, I know people who have passed the N2 and N1 who are not comfortable speaking. They've just done really well at learning the skills necessary to pass that test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So 2 points there. Yeah. So sometimes, people or students ask me like, oh, like, what is the best way to study? Should I do TOEIC or should I do TOEFL? And I was like, no. Because when you're doing TOEIC, you have to spend your time learning how to do TOEIC. Why not use that time studying English?
Right.
You know,
Right. You're learning you're learning test taking English. Like that's what you're learning.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And then the other thing you said, what was the second thing you said there about the test taking? And
I was just rambling. I was just, like you're learning just those specific test taking skills,
Yeah. No, but then you said something after that also made me think of another point. Yeah, I wanted to mention. So no, it's true. So yeah, why not just spend your time learning the language? The only thing is, a lot of Japanese will be hired more readily and or start or get a higher pay if they pass the TOEIC test. The higher their score is, even if they never use English at their job.
100%. Yes, absolutely. So like, it's a culture here. What I've noticed, and like, here's the thing. I've only lived here for 7 years. So like, I'm not some expert. Right. So like anything that I say on here, just take with like a little grain of salt,
Oh, there's always a caveat at the bottom. This is just people's opinions. So
yeah. Good. But like, right here in Japan, what I've noticed is that there is a kind of an emphasis on certifications, right? If you've passed a big standardized test and you've got the certificate to show for it, good. Yeah. If you've gone to a good college and you've got the diploma to show for it, good. If and it's like all these little, because it's such like a test centric culture, if you're able to show that you passed the test and you've got a certificate to show for it, you can go places. It doesn't actually, the certificate is greater than the actual ability. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember what the other thing I was going to say is about the levels. I knew somebody was this Chinese woman. She had gotten, I think, level 2 or level 1 on the Japanese test. And we were out somewhere and somebody said something like "Machide doshita," which means really, like, why?
Yeah.
And she didn't understand. And she looked at me and I was like, "You don't understand?" It's like, "What is maji?" And I was like, "Well, you should know maji. It's like really common word, means really." And then she said, "Yeah, and what is doshita?" And I was like, do shimashita. Ah, do shimashita. She only knew like the long words. And maybe because they probably said, because it was Kansai, they probably said doshitang, like the N at the end.
Yeah.
And so, it was, I was like, what? Like,
it can
write fluently. She could read Japanese with two things I can't do. I can't write and read fluently. I can only write whatever I can say. Anything that I'm saying, I could speak. I can text it, or text it like this. But like everyday conversation, I can read and write, but I can't read a book or a newspaper or anything like that. But so she was at that high level, but she couldn't understand like some just normal like expression that somebody said.
It's the curse of it, it's the curse of the test taking Japanese. It's like, I'm an N2 and by N2 standards, I should be comfortable in almost any scenario in Japanese. And that's not true. Right. So like my wife and I are about to move, we're about to move out of our apartment into a little house. And all of this moving jargon is all of the vocabulary, like, I think that can be the really hard thing is you think you're good at Japanese until you enter a situation that you haven't been exposed to yet, right? So like a classic example of this is like, oh yeah, I can get around in my daily life in Japanese, but I've got to go to the doctor. Okay, cool. So how well do I really know my doctor vocabulary? Not very. You go to the doctor and the doctor's like, oh, well, you probably speak Japanese, so here, let me tell you what's wrong with you. And I'm like, oh, please slow down, I need help.
And then there's another thing, like even if you're good at a certain situation, you'll some people will understand that you're not a native speaker and they'll dumb a few things down for you.
Which is the best. That's the very best.
Some people are just so clueless that they don't understand. They don't change their language. I had a girlfriend who was notoriously like that. She would say something to me and I was like, what? And then she would, so I would look it up in the dictionary and I would say, well, why didn't you just say this? You're saying the like big word that like, you're saying that like the most, you're saying it in the most complicated way. Like if I'm talking to a non-native speaker, whether they're from Poland or, or China or whatever, and I could say like introspective, or I could say thinking about myself, I'll choose the second one, because I know they're not going to get the 4-syllable words or whatever,
It's about adapting and making sure that I think the place that I struggle with that the most, frankly, is on phone calls with Japanese people. With like, so for example, like, if you're making any sort of official phone call, like right now, because I'm moving, I've had to call the internet company, all the utilities companies like water and gas and electric and all this stuff. There's a very, very specific set of Japanese language vocabulary that is very polite, keigo vocabulary that the person on the other end of the phone is trained to use when they're making official calls. So if you're calling a representative from the internet company, they're going to speak to you using a language that is kind of like treating you like a king, right? The number of times I'd have to say, hey, listen, I understand kind of what you're saying here, but like, if you could just speak to me casually, I will understand a lot more of what you're telling me, because keigo is not my forte, my friend, and phone calls, like official phone calls, are the absolute best example of that for me specifically,
Especially for me when I first came, because, I started to get, I was here about 6 months or whatever, a year, and it was the same thing. I was probably calling NTT to get about my phone or something like that, or to get internet. Yeah. And the polite language that you're talking about, a lot of times it sounds like passive tense. So they'll say like, well, a letter will be sent. Yeah. And then I go, but by whom? So I have to send you the letter, or you're sending me the letter? And then they say, so this, okay, yes. Yes, that's right. A letter will be sent. It's like,
but who?
Who is sending the letter? And who's calling who? And it's like, and so I had the same problem. And then I was getting upset. George is getting upset. Maybe Seinfeld's before your time. Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, there is that classic passive tense as used for honorific language, and it does make things really confusing. It's like, who's doing what, when, where, how, like what's going on? Please, somebody answer this for me.
And I did the same thing as you did. I said, like, can you please just speak in normal Japanese, just don't speak in keigo? But she would not do it. And then only after I got off the phone, I thought, of course she's not doing it, because like you said, they're trained to speak like that. Right. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to need to, next time I'm going to have to ask them for the manager. So I asked her, can I speak to your manager, please? And the manager came on, and I said, hey, your employee's doing a great job. They're speaking to me very politely, but I can't understand them. Can you please explain to me just in normal Japanese? And then they did. Yeah. Because if they got heard speaking normal Japanese, they'd probably get in trouble. It's like, what are you doing? Right. You can't talk to the customer like that,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, it can be really tough to, like, especially on phone calls, to get people to switch from their trained honorific language Japanese to, like, casual shooting the shit kind of Japanese, but it is what it is. It's just the little things that you got to get used to when you're living here. And
a friend of mine has this, my friend, James, I told him about kyūdō before, and I said, like, they should understand that we're not foreigners, and they should speak, the lower level, and and I don't know why. I never learned kyūdō because it's kind of pretentious or whatever. And he said something that stuck with me. He said, no. He said, I think you're wrong, Brent. I think learning that honorific Japanese is the mark of an intelligent person. And until you learn it and speak it the way they do, you're not going to be regarded as intelligent, and you're not going to be able to, have a like on par discussion with them. Mm-hmm. It's part of the language, just like learning your local language. Like for me, it's Kansai Ben. For you, it's what? Honno Ben? What do you call it?
Tono Ben.
Tono Ben, right? So you've got to learn it. That's what people around you are learning, but they're also using kyūdō, and you kind of got to learn it. So since I heard that, I thought, yeah, okay. And so I started paying more attention to it and started using it more. And it works so much better when you go somewhere and you say, like, even you just ask for sugar at Starbucks. If you could say, which I don't do because I don't take sugar, but just like, for example, you say, sato itadakemasu ka? If you say it like that instead of, sato morao or sato kurasai or whatever.
Sato kurasai, yeah, or sato kurasai, yeah.
Such a nicer, nicer level. We as foreigners tend to love being more casual because it's more friendly, it's more comfortable. Yeah. Japanese are the opposite, as you know. They are uncomfortable being casual, and they're very comfortable being
right. Yeah,
until you have another thought.
No, I was just going to say, it's very, very like walls are up, and it takes a little bit of effort to kind of break down the walls to get to a more casual, very, very friendly conversation style.
Yeah. By the way, the more the sun goes down over here, the more I have this like bland sort of beige. I'm blending into the walls.
I've noticed that it is getting really dark in here. I just got that one light source now. It used to be the light from that ring light, and then the window light, and now there's no window light.
You're looking like the cover of Meet the Beatles. I looked like just all washed out, but I'll try and fix it in post. But anyway, and I need to up my lighting game, I think, at some point. Tell me about your house. Was it an Akiya or
Yeah. So we're going to be renting a house until we get permanent residency. I think that's probably the right move for us, right? We live in an apartment now. It's great. But right now, the apartment that we live in is like 35, 40 minutes drive from my wife's new job. And that can get kind of rough because I teach at night. She has a day job, and then to add 40 minutes each way. And it's like my wife and I enjoy spending time together, and we've got this situation right now where like our work schedules conflict, like when she's getting off work, I'm starting work. And then also when, she's got all that drive time. And we're like, we got to live closer to your work. Great. Simple as that. Right. Yeah. And so we found like a little house for rent. And then once we get permanent residency, we're going to be looking to buy our own home because renting is not what we want to be doing. We would rather buy a house, but I feel like the risks are a little bit too high to buy a house before we've acquired permanent residency. If, for example, something falls through with our jobs, something falls through with our visas, anything falls through and we're forced to, for example, return to America, which I don't think is going to happen. That would be like a catastrophe, right? But God forbid, right? Something like that happens and we've purchased a house, that could be kind of a little bit of a tough situation that we've put ourselves in. Then we're looking at selling a house and all this stuff. So we're going to wait until we get permanent residency, which I think we'll probably apply for in about 3 or 4 years from now.
Have you looked into the empty houses, the Akiya?
Oh yeah, we have. So we did a lot of looking at Akiya there's a town, I'm not going to dox myself too hard here, but there's a town near where we live called Enna City. And it was recent. So Japan really loves to like rank things. And in terms of its population bracket, Anna City was just ranked the most livable, best countryside town in the entire country of Japan.
Great.
Which is awesome. That's super great, right? It's an incredible place there, and there are plenty of akiya, empty abandoned houses out there. And we had looked into a lot of them, actually. We had done a bunch of tours of them. There were some of them that were great, some of them that were most assuredly haunted. And I'll probably make a video about our experiences touring these akiya and put them on my YouTube channel, my Kurikurinton channel. We didn't end up getting any of them because the job that was in Enna City that my wife had applied for fell through. So if we had moved out to Enna City, we'd kind of be in a tough spot now because it's even way further from where my wife currently works, right? So it's a good thing we didn't buy a house then, because we would have kind of shot ourselves in the foot. But
that's the thing about buying a place is you can't be mobile. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We've certainly looked at several. Some of them were incredible. We fell in love with a couple of them, but then the job fell through, and we were like, let's hold off on buying a house until we get permanent residency, until we're much more stable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's great. And so about like so why you came to Japan because you wanted a break. And so why exactly did you stay? You've mentioned a couple things that you like, but what is it that you love about Japan?
So, a handful of reasons why I think I chose to stay. Not the least of which, probably the biggest one, is I met my wife here. So I was placed out in the countryside, in a little countryside town in Gifu Prefecture, and a year later, she was accepted by the JET program and was placed in the same little countryside town. I was her advisor, like her regional prefectural advisor. So I'm kind of like the welcome committee was when I was on JET. I was the welcome committee for like all of the incoming JET English teachers. And so it was my job to, show everyone around, make sure they know that like if they have any problems, if they need any help with anything, they can contact me. And my wife and I, she was placed in the same town coincidentally, and we met and we hit it off. We totally hit it off, and then 3 years later we were like, let's get married, and we got married. And, there have been multiple times here, notably during the pandemic, that we have contemplated going back to America, right? It was not an easy thing being here during the pandemic. As a foreign person, I can't even imagine what it was like during the pandemic as a foreign person that is not white. It was probably even harder than I would have gone home, right? Like I would have gone back to America. So I can't even begin to imagine what an experience from a person of color would have been during the pandemic. And as a foreigner living here, I already knew, I knew like, oh, well, it's hard for me. During that time, we were thinking about going back, but we decided to stick it out for a while. I think one of the things that kept me and my wife, Lindsay, staying here was stability. So I know for me personally, I grew up very poor. I know that sounds weird because I was raised in LA, but spoiler alert, there are poor people in LA too. Surprise. So I grew up very poor. And when I moved here and I was working on the JET program, it was literally the first time in my life where not only was I financially independent and stable, I was able to pay off my debts and put away money in savings every month. And I was like, oh, okay, so wait a second. Like it like really changed the way that I looked at my living situation. I was like, I had a really rough first year here in Japan. A lot of drama happened in my first year in Japan. And even then I was like, well, I can't justify going back to America, because I would be trying to justify going back to not making enough money to survive, racking up credit card debt because I don't make enough money to survive, like this constant sense of instability. And it wouldn't matter where I went back to in America. It wouldn't matter if I went to the countryside of America or to a big city in America. It's just less stable. I wouldn't be able to go to the doctor if I got sick. I wouldn't know for a fact that if my wife and I had a kid, every time we sent them off to school in the morning, we wouldn't feel this searing anxiety every morning that they wouldn't come home, And so there were like things like that it was like, I am willing to, I'm willing to push past some of the tough things about being a visible minority in a foreign country, because the things that I'm trading are just so much greater. Stability, safety, not just financial stability, but also just like mental stability. The industry I was getting into was incredibly competitive and tough, right? So that's that. Like not long story short, I stayed here because each passing year, my wife and I found ourselves building a life here. Like I do kyūdō now. I started doing kyūdō Japanese archery as soon as I moved to the country, because my students showed me their clubs. I've got Japanese friends. I've got, like just a level of stability that I didn't even know was possible back in America. And I think that that's what's keeping me,
Yeah, I see. And so going back to something you said is kind of interesting about the not being non-white here during the pandemic. Are you saying, you mean non-English teacher level, like more like the people who work here cleaning the toilets and sweeping the streets and making bentos at factories? Are you talking more about economic disparity or actual racial differences?
So what I will say is that, like, I think that when in the early stages of coming and living in Japan as someone who is not Japanese, you start to feel very othered a lot of the time, right? People will change, there's the quote unquote gaijin seat on trains. You sit down next to someone and they'll get up and move and change seats so they don't sit next to you, right? And things like that. And so you start to feel really othered. And so in the early stages of living here, you can start to get really offended, like, oh man, it's because I'm different than a Japanese person, right? And then I think that, like, maturing and growing up is realizing that is the lived experience of, like, minorities in America every day and worse. And then growing up even further from that is taking a step back of all the little tiny things that annoy you about being a minority here, and realizing that as a white man here in Japan, as a white person, I'm like a model minority, right? And it is harder to be black in Japan. It is harder to be, from the Philippines in Japan, or, because we've got a lot of, like, Filipino ALTs and stuff. It's harder to, like, any time I got offended by some little dumb microaggression or some little thing that had me feeling like, shaking my fist, I had to take a step back and remember, this is probably so much harder for someone who's not just experiencing microaggressions, but is experiencing more serious aggressions, right? Yeah. And I think that truly, I cannot stress this enough. If you are a white person, a white man living in America, I think that it is so valuable to move to a country where you are no longer the majority, to understand even a tiny amount what it feels like to be othered, to be not in the majority anymore, right? Sure. Because you start to understand a little bit of like, oh man, I guess, when I was in America and I asked that kid in class, oh, but where are you really from? And they were born in Detroit, like, I guess that is actually really fucking frustrating. Sorry. And so I think that having this experience, moving overseas, not being in the majority anymore, really opens your eyes up to the things that you could do better to be essentially a better ally to minorities everywhere, right? If I return back to America, it's about me doing my best to make sure that like I am always staying vigilant to ensure that the lives of minorities, people who are in the minority around me, are the best that they can be, right? Like, I don't know.
I think for me, it's just like, just don't be a douchebag,
Exactly, right.
People around you, if you're kind to the people around you, and then those people are kind to the people around them, then and so on and so on and so on, the world would be a better place, right? But wouldn't you agree that despite the like not being sat beside on the train or whatever, that don't you have far more favoritism as a foreigner in Japan than you do like negative discrimination?
I would say that would be sort of along the lines of like the model minority situation, right? But I think what can be said here is that there is no amount of stereotyping, positive or negative, that there is any stereotyping at all is negative, even if it is perceived as positive, right? It's the classic example that like in America, a lot of people are like, oh, well, black people are good at sports. And it's like, yeah, if you're talking to someone who is a philosophy major and has zero interest in sports, that quote unquote like positive stereotype is still not actually serving that person, like, oh, Asians are good at math, right? There is no any stereotype at all, whether it's perceived to be positive. It's like, oh, well, why is it harmful to say that Asian people are good at math? It's like, because now if you have someone who math is not their forte, who they are skilled in the arts or something, you're making them feel as though they are not able to fulfill an existence that has been pre-planned for them, right? So like, you know what I mean? So like I do completely understand, there is a little bit of like a curiosity, right? A little, and especially with someone that looks like me, like just a white dude, there's like a little bit of favoritism, but it does come from a place of, oh, well, all foreigners do this, right? Or like, oh, you're from, one that I get a lot is like, oh, you're from Los Angeles? Oh, isn't that just the most dangerous place in the world and all this stuff? And it's like, so there are all these things that like, there's a little bit of like, oh, you're an English teacher, teach me English. There's a little bit of that favoritism, but on the flip side of that, it's like, I truly, in my heart of hearts, don't think that there is a single stereotype on this planet that actually serves a community in a positive way. You know what I mean?
I think I generally disagree, but I have a different take on it. Like, stereotypes exist, and I think they tend to exist for a reason, because humans naturally classify, and I think any human alive today is alive because we stereotyped. We discriminated against some or other group that was possibly dangerous to us, and we either killed them or went to war with them or whatever. And the people who are not here anymore are, if there was any group in the past, let me put it this way, if there's any group in the past who became suddenly benevolent and didn't discriminate against any other tribes, they're now dead. And so sometimes, so just let me finish the thought. So I think one way that stereotypes can help is that, like, let's say a friend of mine is going to Los Angeles, and they say, "Is Los Angeles a different, a dangerous place?" And I say, "Well, it can be. You should be careful and don't go to places that you don't know." And this stereotype thinking that people in Los Angeles are dangerous is some thing that might generally be true for some area. We'll actually serve them. We'll actually serve them well.
Yes. But that wouldn't be stereotyping that. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Where it breaks down is that on an individual level, you cannot treat any one person according to the stereotype that you have of that group or that place or whatever. So, for example, we would maybe agree that Japanese are generally polite or kind.
Sure.
And that's a stereotype. But is a Japanese person polite or kind? I have no idea. I have to talk to them. We don't know. There's lots of really
Of course. Of course.
There's murderous Japanese people. So I think the stereotypes can sometimes have a benefit, but the danger is that we can have a stereotype without they have to be, two things can be true at the same time. A person should be judged completely on their individual merits, and something general can be true about a population of people.
Right. A cultural trueness, right? In Japan, growing up in Japanese culture and in Japanese education, there is an education around a collectivism that, we are here to help one another, right? And whereas in America, the education system permits more of an individualist, pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort of education, right? And therefore, you have sort of cultural truths, right? And we are shaped by the cultures that we're raised in, right? So there are these like little through lines. I totally understand what you're saying, right? These little tiny cultural shared experiences, these cultural shared things, right? Totally understand what you're saying,
Yeah. And I get the point, like, there are no such thing as good stereotypes, because the danger is you're painting a person as the stereotype, and that's the danger.
And I think that the thing that's hard about this is, and like, because I, to a certain degree, I understand and agree with what you're saying, like there, especially when we talk about like cultural upbringing and the way that a culture shapes us, right? I think that the reason I'm so wary of any stereotype whatsoever is how rapidly a stereotype can be used for evil, right? Yeah. For bad, used to subjugate a community or suppress a community, used in ways that is just,
and it gives
criminal.
Yeah,
it gives ammunition
to people who are, possibly racist or fascist or, whatever.
Right. I think I mentioned this before, right? That being here during COVID was hard. Were you here during COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough, right? And I think that the roughness of being here during COVID wasn't just people talking. It was you look on TV, on Japanese television, and you'd see government officials telling the public, oh, well, English speakers don't really understand foreign people don't understand the culture and customs of Japan, so they're spreading COVID. Or there was that classic news report of the little tissue, and it's like, this is a pen, and and it made the tissue fly because the person was like, and it was insane, right?
Watch the news.
Oh, yeah. It was all over the internet because it was essentially this the English language spreads a lot more COVID because it's a much more loud language, and so there's this person that was standing in front of a tissue, and they were like, "Kore wa pen desu," and said it with this tiniest little voice. And then it's like, okay, now let's try again in English. And she's like, "This is a pen," and it's just this explosive, and it's so ridiculous, right?
Comical, yeah. I have to say for the record that actually because I was allowed to keep my job and teach online. that thankfully, because otherwise I would have been living in a cardboard box by the station. That actually, you know, I fared well. Unfortunately for my students, they had like no social life. They had
it's rough.
The same amount for their university. It was a horrible education. Most of their teachers were just putting assignments up on the university website saying, read this, answer these questions. They weren't even teaching a class.
They weren't even teaching. Yeah. It was really rough. It was not a good time. And like, you had these situations where, regardless of the fact that non-Japanese people, foreign people, make up like less than 3% of the population, a lot of the burden of COVID spreading in Japan like wildfire was being placed on foreign people. And this was happening in America too. It was like, oh, you don't look white. You must be the reason COVID's spreading, right?
Yeah. So something's wrong. Who's the out group? And then
exactly. And that's the reason.
Proclivity, right? Like
it's so scary. It's a human proclivity that I think that everyone needs to be acutely aware of. And anytime they find themselves thinking in a way that groups people all under one blanketed ideology or anything like that, they need to take a step back and be like, wait a second, what inside me is making me think this about an entire group of people? You know what I mean? And that's why I'm so wary. That's why, in my opinion, I don't think there is necessarily any real like positive use to stereotyping. It's like how quickly can this be used for something truly detrimental to a community, you know? And because like even when it's a positive one, you know, or a perceived positive one, it's like, you know, how quickly could this be turned against someone, you know?
I get that. And I've come across that. This guy I used to talk with about racial issues and, class divide and stuff like that. And he was always telling me things like that because I was interested in the truth. And if that truth is super dangerous and gives ammunition to fascists or racists or rapists, whatever the worst dregs of society, I don't care. I just want to know if it's true or not. And then if it's used, in a strange, messed up way by somebody who's messed in the head, we can't really control that. But I think objectivity is a good goal. But yeah, I understand not
always. Yeah.
Like, what if it's true that actually, like, just going by your example, and everybody, this is just an example. What if it ended up being true that black people were better at sports? That would give some people, these, neo-Nazi, whatever people who've been saying, the Ku Klux Klan type people who've been saying that the only good thing about black people is that they're good entertainers and they're good at sports. It would give them ammunition to think like, see, we were right all along. But even still, if it's true, it's true. And if it's unfortunately true, then okay. And I'm not saying that it is, because all around the world, we have athletes of varying proficiencies of all races and types. The Olympics is a good testament to that.
Yes, of course.
Absolves me of any potential danger in this conversation, I hope.
No, of course. I mean, here's the thing. I am happy to have the hard conversations. I think that, like, when it boils down to it, like, much of the internet right now is just kind of revolving around like gotchas and like people yelling at each other. And it's like the only way that anyone's going to be able to like get on each other's levels and agree to disagree or agree is if we actually have like tough conversations. You know what I mean? Like, and so like, it just is what it is. It's, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think the worst culprits are the ones who take whatever somebody says, they take offense by whatever somebody says, they find offense in whatever somebody says, and they take the worst possible, how do you say that? They take the worst possible understanding of what somebody says, you know.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Instead of seeing what somebody wrote or hearing what somebody said and taking it in the best possible way it could, like if something I said can be taken in two ways, take it in the better way. It's probably 99% of the time, and that's the way I meant it.
We're trying to assume the best in people. That would be ideal, is if we could assume that people are generally good and they're trying to do their very best. I mean, it does seem like common sense that we should be trying to assume that people are generally trying their very best. I mean, there are people out there that are doing their very worst, and that those aren't the people you want to be around. But the people that are doing their best, that's what's up. Those are the people you want to serve.
Speaking about doing our best, we're both making content for YouTube and whatnot. You have a YouTube channel. I've seen all your stuff on Instagram only.
I do have a YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel revolves around my kyūdō content.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll put a link.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, I probably mentioned this earlier on, but for anyone who's listening that doesn't know what kyūdō is, it's like traditional Japanese longbow archery. And if you're interested in knowing what that is all about, you can check it out on my YouTube channel. And the thing so I've been doing kyūdō for several years now. I'm taking the test for my 5th level. I've taken it and failed it 7 times because it's really hard.
I saw one of your failures just today or yesterday. Yeah, it looks really difficult.
It is brutal. But it's also probably like my favorite thing. Like, I don't think I've ever had a hobby or a sport that I've taken part in my life other than like when I was young and a skateboarder. Since then, I don't think I've had something that I've been this passionate about. And it's incredible. And so like what I had noticed was there is pretty much no content on YouTube that is kyūdō content in English.
All right.
And and the thing is that it's a very niche community. There are kyūdōjos, archery halls in America, in Sweden, in Germany, in Brazil, it's worldwide, but it's a very small community, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like upload my progress in this, right? And I've been uploading it ever since, and it's by a large margin my most popular content on my YouTube channel, by such a significant margin my most popular content. Like I'll post a video of me taking a skills test, and after a couple weeks it's got like tens of thousands of views, and then I'll post like a video of like here's a day trip out to Hida Takayama, and it gets like 100 views, and I'm like, cool, nobody cares about my life except for kyūdō. That's what people want to see. So it's such a niche little thing.
Yeah, all you need is like 10 people in every country looking at your thing, and then all of a sudden that's like thousands of views. That's really cool. Yeah, when I came here I did kendo. Just for a few years, and then about your Instagram channel, you have a lot of nice and cute content on there. And what is your kind of goal for that? I notice you like to teach. You're kind of a natural teacher, so you like to teach people things. That's part of the reason I'm doing mine, is because this whole thing, what we're doing now, is to teach people who are abroad, who are wondering what life is like in Japan, for people who lived here a long time and wondering what life could be like living in the countryside, doing kyūdō, or some other friend who loves to ski or whatever, and so I want to just, give them information, and hopefully in an entertaining or engaging way. But so what is your idea behind your Instagram channel?
Okay. So I graduated from film school, and my Instagram and my YouTube are kind of ways for me to like just make sure that all of the little muscles that I trained the artistic muscles that I trained when I was in film school don't just go to waste, So like I got myself a decent camera, and it's kind of my way to exercise any of my cinematography muscles. I'll write little, scripts or things like that. And it's just kind of a way for me to make sure that any of the skills and things that I learned back in my days of making movies, don't just disappear over time. If you don't exercise any muscle, that muscle will start to deteriorate, and it doesn't matter if it's a physical muscle or a creative one.
Yeah, like I said, I like your channel because the photography and videography is really good, and you have a couple styles of videos. One is you tell a little story. You did like you and your wife driving a train. That was a really cool experience, and it's not only the experience, but it's kind of like you do a good job like telling the story, and the clips are just like the right length where it's not too long, but it's not like so fast. It's like a music video or whatever. You have other things where you're going out to places. I do a lot of those videos too, where you're just going out somewhere and you video your little trip or whatever. One style of video you have that I don't do enough of, and it's just you're walking and you have this. It seems like you're walking, you have this idea, and you're like, you know what? I'm turning my phone on or my camera, and while you're walking, you just say, "Hey, I've noticed this about Japan," and blah blah blah, and you just start talking about some.
Right.
I don't know if those are off the cuff or if you've actually planned them.
So sometimes there's a little planning going into them. Like, I talked a little bit about how in one of my videos, I think you saw it, how I don't really love the architecture of modern Japanese kit homes.
I made a comment.
That actually got a lot of like flack. I think a lot of people were like, why don't you stay in your lane? Like, you don't deserve an opinion on the way these houses look. I'm like, guys, I'm just saying that I like old houses the way they look more. Like, this isn't some bigger thing. I'm just saying like the old houses are pretty and these ones look like boxes. That's literally it.
If I say I like tall women, it's like, stay in your lane. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like,
right.
Sorry, that's just what I prefer. I like old houses. I like broccoli more than I like spinach.
Right. And that's what but like when it came to that, I've reached the maximum length on my audio recording, so we'll see how that goes.
This is basically my last question, so I can fill in with the audio. Yeah.
But yeah, so for those, like, I will typically have an idea or like a topic. Like, I have a note, several notes on my phone of like things I want to talk about, like things I want to address, and so to a certain degree, I don't think I make videos that are really truly off the cuff. There's one video on my Instagram that's off the cuff, and it's because you couldn't plan it. And that was my first really viral video on Instagram was me and my wife in a thrift store in Japan. And we found a t-shirt that said 9/11, we will not forget. And it had like an American eagle on it. And I was like, oh my God, like, Jesus, like that is really intense to find in like a thrift store. That was, I think, the only truly like, I need a video of this shirt, man. But everything else is for the most part planned. And then all the photography that I post on there is photography that I take on film, because before I started learning filmmaking, my first passion was photography, and I learned film photography in high school. With shout out to Mr. Neely, I hope that guy's doing great. Greatest photo teacher ever. But yeah, so film photography and usually planned out videos.
I really like your stuff. Like I said, the composition and you seem to get like really good lighting, and your timing is good for like live scenes. You tend to like, catch people in right at the right times. You have a really good sense for it. So,
thanks.
So yeah, it's good. I found also that sometimes the times where I think like I should video. No, I'm not going to video this. What the hell? I'll video it and see later. Then it gets like, just recently, because I was right here. I was having a hot pot party with some friends. So, and I was like, hey, this is something I should put a video of. And I thought, no, I'm not gonna, because it's a private moment or whatever. But I thought, I'll just make a video anyway. So I just took my phone. It's like, hey, you know what? This is what hot pot meals are all about. It's all about sharing, with friends. And I introduced my friends, and that's what it's all about. Yeah, I got like normally my videos get around 500 views. This one got like, I think it's at 19,000 or 20,000 now.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to take it because I thought like, this is kind of crappy. But then the ones that I plan, I think, oh, this is going to be good. People are really going to like this. It's informative. It's entertaining, and it's like 250 views. And I'm like, God damn it. You can't like.
That's anything. Absolutely true. Right. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Like I feel this way when especially on my Instagram, right? I'll post this video where I've taken my Fujifilm X-T4 camera and I've gone out to this incredibly gorgeous place, and I'm taking these shots that I'm like, oh man, my film professors would be proud. And then I throw them on my computer and I open them up in my coloring software and I make sure that they look as beautiful as possible. And they get like 500 views. And then I make a dumb video on my phone where I'm like, hey, these houses look like shoe boxes. And people are like, this is the best video I've ever seen. And I'm like, great. Okay. This is, I guess, like,
no, okay. You don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's impossible to know. Everyone tries to get their like finger on the pulse of like, oh, this is what the algorithm favors. And it's like, dude, just make what you want to make, like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's just it. Yeah. That's why I'm doing this too. Cause these my podcast is not popular. Like the average is something like 100 to 120 views. But I like doing it. I'm enjoying this conversation a lot, and it's worth just doing it, even if nobody really watched it. Anyway, it's still cool doing it. Not nobody. I would maybe lose motivation, but hey, some people are watching it, and I like doing it. And if millions of people were watching and I hated doing it, that would be like a little.
It'd be a job. Yeah. It'd be like your run of the mill job at that point. Yeah.
That's what I do not want to do. And that's why I'm also kind of doing it on my terms. I'm not doing it typically like the ones that I do here in my dining room. I'm not doing them like other podcasters do. I'm doing them the way I want to do it, because if I don't, then it's like a job. Then I'm going to stop wanting to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just doing what I want. Yeah. Another problem with my channel is I post music and Japan stuff. And so I think some people are like,
what are you?
Takoyaki, and I want to see about, temples. I don't want to see you play bass. Like what is, is this? Yeah. And then the musicians are like, dude, I like your bass videos. And why are you posting about, takoyaki? What is this? So
yeah. Completely.
But whatever. Yeah.
I struggle with that too a little bit, where I'm like, I've got all these different kinds of things that I want to make.
Yeah.
And it's like the problem with, pretty much all social media and the way these algorithms work is, oh, well, you have to find the one thing that starts garnering you attention on the internet and then just keep doing that over and over again. And I'm like, that's not, I don't think ever gonna be what I am gonna be doing on here. So like that's why sometimes on my Instagram, on my YouTube, you're gonna be seeing stuff that's like, where'd that come from? I wonder why he decided to make that video. And it's like, because I just decided that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and my channel is called Brent in Japan, so it's about me, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. I actually looked up on YouTube, like, should I specify or should I, generalize? And there's all kinds of different opinions about it. And, so a lot of people just said like, no, just make it about you, and people will connect if they like you and what you're doing. And so whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, may you have many connections with your content and everything. Thanks for coming on. It was a great
Thank you. Yeah. And, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'll post the links below, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you feel free to message me anytime. Thanks,
Okay,
and
great.
thanks to all the people who are listening.
All 120.
Yeah, I mean that's more than none.
It is.
That my wife. One last thing, my wife said something really interesting. I posted on my YouTube channel. I poured a lot of heart and soul into a video about why I think Nagoya is an amazing town, and I uploaded it, and it's at like 500 views, and I was like really a little bit discouraged, right? Because my kyūdō content my kyūdō content gets a lot more views, and my wife said something like, "Think about it this way: if 500 people were in a theater watching your video on Nagoya, how would you feel about it?" I'm like, "Oh, well, that would be incredible." It's like, well, then why do you have a problem with if it's 500 people on the internet?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think of it as like, I have like 20 students max, and I teach them something.
Yeah.
Well, that's 20 people. If 120 people are watching this, that means I have like a class of 120 people. So and 500 people, like you said, or my base videos do much better. But if you had those people in, like your wife said, those people in one room listening to you or watching your movie, would you be happy about it? Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's another thing, bringing it back to Japan. Like, it's all about expectations. If you get on YouTube expecting views and expecting to be popular, you're going to be sorely disappointed. If you come to Japan expecting you're going to be part of Japan, you're going to be accepted by Japanese people, you're going to integrate into life and everything like that, you're going to be disappointed. Come here with the expectation that you're going to be an outsider and that there's actually benefits to it. And there's a video we could make, the benefits of being on the outside in Japan. Because there's a lot of crazy meetings we don't have to attend. There's obligatory dinners with this or that boss that we can get out of that Japanese people just cannot escape, because if they did, they would be pariah in the office, Anyway, lower your expectations. That's good.
Right.
That's good for
lower your expectations. On that note,
lower your expectations. Okay, man, great. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Okay, great.